本当？見えないでしょ？どこにいるのかな？見えないよ。
What's good, Internet? It is January 11th, 2022, and you are listening to Waypoint Radio, episode 453. I'm your host, Rob Zachney, and I'm joined by Patrick Klepek.
Hello.
Our producer, Ricardo Contreras.
Yo.
So, y'all, my my big action items this year was to really, figure out that sleep schedule. You know, really get those, 7...
Rob's action item is to have more action items, is what my general, take on the situation.
Yeah, I mean, that's what go-getters do. You identify what actions need taking.
Wow.
You make it an action item. You get that little dopamine
See, I feel
hit.
go. I think the getting part is the hard part for you. You're ready to go. You're look, all these things, then I'm gonna go. And then you gotta get to the getting part.
That getting part, it's tricky. And I think this was a good example of how things end up getting screwed up. I was like, man, this year I'll be better about getting on a sleep schedule, getting healthy habits, waking up rested. Can you imagine waking up rested with the feeling of strength in your limbs and not needing to stand in a blazing hot shower for 25 minutes to feel human? Just incredible stuff.
And now when you do that blazing hot shower, the whole time you're thinking of how much it costs.
How much it costs? Yes, I'm completely tainted it.
Your go-getting was to go get a device that is giving you more anxiety about the
It is true.
It's just what my therapist told me. I need to feel more in control, and so I got a device that gives me control of too much information.
Yep. But I was off to a good start last week. I was getting to bed. I had a whole little bedtime routine going on. I made the adult decision. I can't be playing video games late at night.
What is your cutoff? How do you do a wind down? It's quiet, the equivalent of quiet time with my children. It's look, now it's a book time, or it's got to be.
Yeah, no. So look, at 8 p.m., I am trying to knock
At 8 a.m., Rob is thinking about time to wind down for the day.
So get up at 7. Get up at 7, look around, 8 a.m., go back to bed, get the rest of that sleep, try again tomorrow. Maybe the world will be better. So now, I am trying to, not play video games after, 8:30 or 9.
Okay.
Because there's a real good chance that, if I get fired up at that point, I will start making bad decisions at 10:30, where it's okay, I should really start winding it down. And at that point, I might be fuck it. Let's see how far I could go.
Well, I think this is a specific, this is an issue. You play tactics games in which the measure of a round or a one more thing to do is so much longer than the games that I play, where it's I'll just do this one more, a platforming level. It's 20 minutes later, I'm okay, I can get out of here.
At some point over break, I was up to 3 a.m. replaying High Fleet, but without doing any battles. I was what if I just play this as a naval war sim and I just use nothing but airstrikes and guided missiles? Surprisingly feasible. But then I was oh shit, it's 3 a.m. Anyway, point is, I was so yeah, I have a little wind down where it's I can still watch TV. Sports time is great. 9 p.m. watching the sports, and then ideally by 10:30, I'm switching to maybe go read a book, get sleepy, do some meditation, all that good stuff.
Mm-hmm.
The thing I didn't count on, I should have counted on this. It's not I didn't know the last week of the NFL season was coming.
Yes. Well, this happened to me. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Last night we all made some choices. Some of us got out of bed in our underwear, couldn't find a blanket, and sat on the. Anyway, keep going.
No, I mean, this is the thing. So I am shattered here today because like I was off to such a good start. Like last week went really well. I was having a great little weekend, getting up early in the morning, doing little baking tasks, playing early morning video games. I was great. I was go-getter. I was on top of the world. And then like I enjoyed a surprisingly competitive Los Angeles Rams 49ers game. But the thing I really didn't see coming was the lurid fascination of the completely needless slugging match between the between the Raiders and the Chargers last night. To be like to give you some context for this, there was an outside like edge case scenario where, depending on how all the games went during the day, the Sunday night game would be a game where if both teams tied, they would both get in. That like there was actually no reason.
They didn't need to play the game. No.
And yet they played the game. They played the shit out of the game. And so it was one of those things where I'm like, Patrick, I was blogging in the background. I was writing something up. Mm-hmm. I was like,
wow, good for you.
Multitasking. I was sitting there watching the game. But it was one of those things where like, you keep looking up at like, hey, is that improbable outside thing like possible here? And each time you look up, it's a little closer to happening, and then eventually you sort of like push everything you're doing aside and start to like really hone in on what the fuck is going on over there. And that was last night's football game, which I think was like 8 hours long, is how it felt.
I was intending to go to bed. Today was the first day of my oldest going to school, which means we've like for the past week, and though we've been working, I've enjoyed the delights of just sleeping as late as until the kids wake up. But like we can't do that when it's a school day. They need to be at school at a certain time in order for her to get on her transport bus. And it just means like everything moves up half an hour.
Transport bus?
Well, she goes to a daycare in like
she got like the APC
like
arriving.
A prison it's like a prison transport. Okay. Like she goes to a daycare and then takes what she calls a bus, but it is just like
it's an MRAP.
It's like a little minivan that like takes some group of kids down the street to the elementary school. But so we had to get up early, and I was like, all right, I normally was gonna Sunday night is usually like where I sneak in a game to talk about it on the podcast. I was like, nope, I'm gonna go to bed and be responsible. And so my wife and I get into bed, and I was like, hey, I need to watch like the last 2 minutes of this game that may have this. I wasn't giving her the details. Like, I just need like 2 minutes. Like, you can start going to sleep, and like I'll be joining you shortly. So I rolled over with the phone, like turned all the way down. I could feel my wife when she's asleep, when she like twitches like a little bit every once in a while. And I was like, all right, so she's out. And then all of a sudden the game ties to go to overtime. And, it's like 10:45, 10:50 or whatever. I'm like, I gotta watch now. I'm getting out. And I was like, got out of bed, realized like all of the blankets are downstairs. We have a family member who is temporarily staying with us for a week or two. I cannot go down there to get the blankets. They are already asleep. And so I'm just like on the couch, just connected the AirPods to the Apple TV, watching this play out, cackling like a demon, hoping for.
It was the most like, well, one, it was a game where I'm like, man, this is why these motherfuckers don't have enough solidarity to win a strike. I was watching, it's like, you don't need to be doing this. I do not know. Like, these guys were out there laying the hurt on each other. Like, it was a hard fought game. And I'm just sitting there watching, like, you guys are just ripping each other to shreds just for the pride of saying that you did it. You know what I mean? Yep. It's like football players are going to compete, whatever the context is. And, like, it's admirable. It made for one of the best games of the year, one of the most fascinating of the year. But also, I kept thinking, like, guys, you don't need to be doing this.
You need like the coaches need like a hand signal, like we're good. Like everyone just take it. Oh, like I seem to have stumbled onto the ground, and the clock appears to keep. And there was evidence of this. Like, and this was like an interesting, like I think, as Austin put it on Twitter, like an organic prisoner's dilemma, in which, like, towards like the end of this game, the overtime, where the way overtime rules work in the NFL is they shouldn't allow for ties. College football got rid of that. It's ridiculous that ties can even occur, given how few games that they play. And so each game like has a lot of meaning, and then ties become very bizarre. But the way it works in the NFL is like they flip a coin. One team receives the ball, goes down the field on offense. If they score a field goal, the other team, when they get the ball back, has to at least score a field goal for the game to continue. If they run out of downs, then the game is over. If either team scores a touchdown first, like then the game is over. The touchdown is just the great equalizer. And so what happened was like one team scored a field goal, the other team scored a field goal, then the other team was coming down, running out of time, and didn't seem like they were actually going to be able to pull off the field goal, and neither team was calling timeouts. One of the things you do in a football towards the end of a game, similar to the way that if you watch the end of a basketball game, like the longest period of a competitive basketball game is the like last couple of minutes as they keep fouling the other players, hoping that they will miss a free throw, and then you'll be able to like make up the deficit that you're trying to get. What you're doing at the end of a football game is calling timeouts to maximize, even if the other team scores, you'll have some amount of time to work with to try and respond. And here, neither team was engaging with timeouts, whether it was to their advantage or not, because they appeared to be kind of signaling through the lack of timeout usage that, well, hey, like a tie works out for the best of us, and a credibly accused sexual assaulter will not be in the playoffs. Cough breath Ben Roethlisberger. So like that just seems like a triple win across the board. And then at some point with a gas defense, the Chargers called a timeout, and it seemed like the mood changed on the Raiders side where they went.
Well, that's the $1 million question. Like, did it? Because, okay, so you had Collinsworth and Michaels who were like, what is, because they had also sort of figured out like, hey, these teams are kind of like both signaling that they're going to mail the rest of this game in, right? Like they're okay with it just sort of.
Yeah, they were the Raiders were running the ball when they should pass, because running the ball takes up the most amount of time off of the clock, and then nobody was calling a timeout to prevent that.
Yeah, and then the Chargers call this timeout, which was really like self-destructive because they were already at like the edge of field goal range. So like I don't like if the Raiders want to win this game, they stand a very good chance of doing it. And as it was, the next play the Raiders ran, they picked up the first down and were now they had complete control of the game, and they kicked this game-ending field goal. And ambiguously, in the post-game interviews, there's like people going over this like the fucking Zapruder film. There's like footage of, because after the game the teams come out and meet, there's footage of two players talking from the opposing teams, and the Chargers player is told something by the Raiders player, and he leans back and sort of gives a like, "Are you for real?" look to the other guy, and then looks away and says like, "Oh man," and shakes his head. And people are like, that's where he found out like the Raiders sideline all knew that they were gonna like let this game end in a tie. And then in his post-game interview, Derek Carr, the Raiders quarterback, was asked like, did that change like the Raiders strategy? And people are like, this is the smoking gun. But actually, if you listen to it, Derek Carr gives the most like vague athlete answer, where it's like he gave the "yeah, for sure" answer, which is just what like sports guys do when they barely pay attention to the question. So like he's asked like, did it change your strategy? He was, yeah, for sure, of course it did. And then the next thing he says is, but we also knew we never wanted this to end in a tie. We came out here to win. And so I'm still not sure that the Raiders weren't at the end of this game still in it to win it. I'm not 100% sold that like it.
Well, the best way to have learned this more than the other was for the Chargers to not allow the Raiders running back Josh Jacobs to like gain like 11 yards at the last second there. Like,
well, that's the thing is like
had they just stuffed him, then the game would have just moved on.
They had no more defense. Like this is like the end of that game was like it was week 18. This game has been a track meet where you've had receivers. This is the other thing. It wasn't just that like the game was close. Like the part of the game that Patrick was in bed for, where I was like slowly like I couldn't look away, was that the Chargers needed the most improbable run of like good outcomes to even make this happen. They were down 2 touchdowns, a 2-point conversion, and a field goal. They needed all of those to happen to tie the game. And then they kept going to 4th down. Like it was 1 4th and 10 after another, which is always a low percentage play. And every time they would like find a way to do it. And so it was like watching it. It was like watching a coin flip, a really high stakes coin flip come up heads like 25 times in a row, where it was eerie to watch. And anyway, when all that ended, it was like 1 a.m. And I was like, well, shit.
Time for
and
a cup
I'm
of
completely
coffee.
wired. Like the end of that game, I was just like, it was the equivalent of like drinking a cup of coffee at like, 11:30 at night, where suddenly I was like, I am just completely awake now. I need to, what I need to start doing? I'm going to start reading tons of NFL coverage until I get sleepy.
I need brightly colored highlight clips to scroll past my eyes with fast edits and pulsing music to just low the rhythms of my heartbeat and start the brain to start moving towards the day after.
And so the day after came very soon. And so I am here in body, but really not in spirit, not in mind. I feel 1,000,000 years old today. And also it's just cold as hell. So like everything is just screaming like, go to bed. Just go to bed.
Just go.
Yeah.
Sleep.
We're I think we're on the other end of a cold. I was walking my oldest down the street to go to her friends yesterday, and we are on our side of the street. The sun hits, and it'll do a good job of sort of like melting away minor parts of like the snow and ice, and you don't have to worry as much about salting. But on the other side of the street, that is not the case. They never seem to get enough sun for that to make any impact. And this like kind of cold snap we've been through got just warm enough yesterday to turn like the top layer into water, but then it would hit the ground and then immediately turn to ice. And you thought, like I've other than, a handful of years on the West Coast, I've lived my entire life experiencing winter. You think you understand how ice works, that you can identify it, know where the patches are. And so like I grabbed my daughter's hand. I was like, hey, like you need to hold my hand the entire time because I'm worried that you're going to slip. And then we like go right around the corner, avoid the big patch on the driveway, like go on to what looks like a very safe, like always sun-soaked spot on like walking down the street, and just immediately both of us, like the first step, just like whomp, and like I managed to catch us.
No.
Didn't eat shit, but like we both did it. And she was like, she turns to me and she goes, there doesn't seem to be any ice. I know we're not supposed to walk in the street. Can we walk in the street? And I was like, that's smart. That's that kid. That is, you're right. We should. That's where they salt the most. That's our cars are like, you're right. Let's get our ass in the street. And we started. And then, of course, I got to the neighbor's house, and it was on the side with no sun. I mean, it's just a death trap. I had to teach her, like, you aren't actually going to lift your feet anymore. We're going to shuffle. Like, so we like practiced on the driveway in a dry spot. And I was like, I need your help to do this, or you're going to have to like crawl on the ground and make, like, it was just a sheet of ice, and they'd already salted it like several times. It didn't matter because new water would come off the roof, and then I've been through a lot of different winter things. Like I have not seen ice that way in a long time. Fortunately, a bunch of it melted this morning, but it was
it's the one that makes me nostalgic for like Wisconsin winter pre like climate change really accelerating, which was that like the hard freeze would start in November. And it basically wouldn't stop, right? Like it was like, well, it's Thanksgiving. It will now not be above like 35 degrees until March. Like that's just what's going to happen. And the thing that gave you was like the ice just turned into like concrete. They got so scuffed up, the traction was fine, and like you knew where it was, right? Whereas here it's like I have to think every morning. So what was the temperature? Yes, like, was there another remelt overnight? Like, am I going to go out there and it's going to be black ice again? Or, like, are we cool? And the answer increasingly is we're not cool. It is very treacherous out there. So, yeah, I hate it. And this despite the fact that I got like really nice, like cold weather boots where like it's got the like you can't wear them when the weather's warm because like the rubber is too soft in warmer weather to really like hold up to like pavement. Those really help, but like there is no dealing with like those thin sheets of like fresh black ice. And then Mina's pissed off because one of the places near us is using a weird road salt that like irritates the shit out of her paws. So now I'm gonna need to like. She's fine with every other like road salt, but there's this one place that like she goes over there and she starts like coming up a bit lame because she doesn't want to put her paws down. So
the thing is, like,
get her little booties.
Yeah, those we tried that with our dog, and it was just nope. We're just gonna have to work around this. Like the boots would not stay on. It was pointless. But I as someone who's had a pet for a decade plus now, I was the person that was buying like buy the pet friendly salt. But you know what that pet friendly salt doesn't do? Cut through the fucking ice the way that regular salt does. Like you're basically buying like, would you like some shitty salt that doesn't? At least that was my experience. Like a couple times, I was like, I eventually was like, I'm sorry. Like I know I don't want to hurt anyone's dog. I don't want to hurt my dog, but also I don't want to slip on the ice. And so we just go around the salt because it was just like it didn't do its job. I was like, I just spent $20 to buy a bag full of shit. I already have bags full of shit made by my dog.
Better now with like making salts that are less irritating, but there's still clearly some that are bad. Also, it didn't help that like the granules were the size of like marbles, and so that probably didn't help either. Yeah. They're just like enormous, jagged crystals. So yeah, winter is here. I feel old, decrepit. I'm sleepy. But also I am high on football, man. What a game. Just wild games, late into the night, and then waking up to a late Christmas present, which is that the Bears fired their general manager and coach.
We take it. We take what we can get, Rob. I have a Bears mug and a Bears sweatshirt on, not because I think my team is good, but because they were bad enough to fire the people in charge. This is my life.
It was like
that's
having Ryan Pace get fired.
Mm-hmm.
having Ryan Pace get fired was like getting Capone on tax fraud. Is the way it kind of felt, right? Where it's like, this is not what you deserve to go down for. Like, you have done so much to this point where you should have been gone ages ago. But you know what? Fine. If this mediocre season, was finally the straw that broke the camel's back, then by all means get the fuck out. So exciting new ways for the Bears to screw it all up from here.
Exactly. You get to start over and be disappointed all over again. It's I live the Sonic cycle, but for the sports team that I care about.
Yeah, no, like we have.
I've
like
never thought about it that way, and it's like, well, I can't make fun of Sonic fans. I am you. I just need to swap the other thing in. That's upsetting.
See, for me, like the Bears are like my relationship with liberalism, right? Where it's like, yep. Like I'm invested in this project for historical reasons, the credentials for which have not been renewed in quite some time, and they are complacently arrogant at sucking for decades. And here I am, backing them to the hill. So that was how I kicked off the week. Just feeling completely washed. Cado, speaking of like, well, mortality, decrepitude, death, pestilence. I hear you got around to playing one of my favorite little indie games from like last year or 2 years ago.
2 years ago, I think. Yeah, Death Crown. Yeah, I had a weirdly busy, but like busy in spurts weekend. So I had like 20-minute gaps of like, I don't have anything to do but I have a thing coming up. So I can't like commit to something long. And for about half those gaps, I played some Pokemon Unite, but then I, for whatever reason, noticed Death Crown in my itch app. I think it like opened when I turned on my PC automatically, and I was like, you know what? I never actually checked this out. It looked good. It sounded interesting. So, and I remember reading that it had, relatively short games. And so popped it open and really enjoyed what I've played of it so far. I don't know how to describe. I guess they're maps, rounds of game. I've played like somewhere around like
what
10
is it?
of them in the campaign.
Death Crown is a minimalist real-time strategy game in
That was-
1-bit style where you play Death herself, commanding her legions of death and punishing humanity's kingdom, capital K, for its overconfidence.
Yeah. So the like moment to moment like gameplay is kind of an RTS, but usually when you say RTS, you expect to be able to control the like little army that you're making more directly than this game, where essentially what you're setting is a path from the building that makes your army towards whatever they're attacking. And that's always going to be a building on the enemy side. And the way that you build out, you have kind of a regular, just kind of slow drip up of gold. You can obviously make buildings that'll make you gold a little faster. But you start kind of in like a limited building area. And as you drop towers, which are kind of ranged defense, and the barracks essentially that make your actual army, that territory expands. And you just kind of direct the armies to kind of path towards the other base where you're trying to destroy the castle, and usually it takes about like 5 hits for it to go down. But along the way they're building their own defenses. If your path runs into a building, you have to destroy it before moving on, even if what you're targeting is like the main building. And it becomes pretty. It's almost like a I end up thinking of it more as like a tower defense game when it like really gets going. It's more about controlling the enemy's paths so that they don't destroy your army enough, and like most of the time I'm like kind of auto just selecting where the army goes, although that has gotten me in trouble sometimes. Yeah.
You're playing on these little like hex grid maps, but they're very small.
Yes.
There is
you see the whole play of field on the screen at all times. Like there is no scrolling around or anything like that. Like it is have all the information is all there for you at once. There's no fog of war either.
But that also means like you just have to deal with like congestion on the board.
Yes.
Where it's a bit like
that's another thing to mention.
Like,
the art style is black and white, straight black and white, no in betweens. 1-bit type of stuff. So it gets really really busy at certain at the end game of like a little map, but yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, and it's incredibly striking, and like the way like slowly you will identify like the momentum of the game beginning to shift, and either it'll be shifting in your favor, and you're like, finally I'm starting to unlock this little logjam I've been working on, or you'll realize that like what you thought was gonna be like kind of a stable front, you're actually slowly being like worn down.
Yeah.
And you realize, like, wow, once they sort of drill through those defenses and, like, get into that, like, graveyard that's, like, producing troops, I am going to be rolled up very, very quickly. So I need to do something fast to sort of change that. Sometimes there's not much you can do. Like, the other, like, really cool and nasty bit about this in some ways is, like, you can just have, like, set yourself up really poorly. You can end up with a position where like you just do not have the open spaces you need to evolve your position at all.
Right.
And you're just kind of stuck.
It is thankfully a very quick kind of match though, which helps like just like at a certain point if you can tell like, oh, this is Breaking Bad, you can just restart. It'll probably take 15 minutes total to finish one of these, maybe even less honestly most of the time. But so like it kind of takes the edge off that bit of like, oh, I didn't set up correctly and now there's no clawing back. I might as well just hit pause and restart the map, which I found like thankfully very easy to do, because that is a problem with like a longer match time. RTS is like, shit, that decision I made minute 2 is coming back to bite me in my ass minute 45, and now it feels like I've dumped a lot of time into something that was doomed from the start.
That's the thing I really admire about like how well-tuned Death Crown is it feels like, man, no margin for error in terms of like which way to tune this, or it either feel trivial or like kind of burdensome.
Right.
It's like kind of just perfect where like it can be just frustrating enough that you're like, oh man, I need to sort of rethink what I'm doing.
Yes.
But it's not like, well, I just flushed 30 minutes down the road, down the well, and I don't know where I went wrong.
Yeah. They also do a great job, I think, of mixing up the AI's reactions. There are definitely a few that I've run into that are like suddenly very aggressive, and I'm like playing in a slightly different style because I'm used to more of the AIs being a little more passive and like trying to build before attacking. There are a few that come out swinging, and you have to kind of change up your game plan when you're expected to kind of like build up a source of gold first. So it's neat that they keep it fresh that way, but they also have had a few essentially boss fights that where the enemy has like a special power. One of them is this horrifying eyeball that appears in the ground, and then any hex touching it becomes the enemy's if it touches it when the eyeball like leaves. But one thing that you can do in this game is sell your buildings. So it became a little like, just keep an eye out for the eyeball and quickly destroy anything near it, because it's better to lose them because you only get half money back. It's better to lose that money than to give up that territory, because then that is territory you can no longer build on, where you can always build back after you've destroyed things. So that one was a fun power. There was also another one where the base itself acted like a turret, but like a really long range turret. So and it would destroy buildings. So there was like a line where you couldn't build anymore, and you had to figure out the best pathing and the best kind of defenses to make a like long range attack where there's basically this big no man's land in the center. So it's really neat. It's really, really neat, and also like blissfully like short in that beautiful bite-sized way where I can just like do a little bit, don't have to commit too much time to it. It's enough like that I can get about my day and still like put some time into it. So that's what I ended up doing. It was really,
This reminds me. So yeah, I'm glad to hear you got into it. It's only like $10 on Steam. It's just a tremendous, like it's a good afternoon with a game.
Totally.
If that, it's not very long. It also does remind me, I was meant to go back and try, there was this RTS series, I think they made 2 of them, Majesty, where it was an RTS game where you didn't control the units. Mm-hmm. Instead, what you tried to do was like incentivize units to do what you wanted them to do. Like, I want to say it was like, how like in every, in like every bog standard RPG campaign, especially tabletop, right? The mayor or the local lord is kind of the wellspring for like party quests and shit. This kind of rolls that into the RTS conceit, where like, to win this match, to take over the map, what you're going to do is like place bounties or something on like targets for different types of like units or parties to go out and do your bidding. And I remember being like, it got, very mixed, but in a way that I always sort of wondered, is it just one of those things where it was just so different from what was like conventional in the genre that people just didn't appreciate how good it was? I don't know. Like, my suspicion is probably not. Like, my buddy Troy Goodfellow admired it but didn't love it, if memory serves, and said there were some real issues with it. But Death Crown kind of reminds me of that, where it's like this whole notion of like not having the direct ability to just like fling like troops or something at the enemy, but instead having to sort of like almost like redirect the flow of the map like it's a river.
Right.
That's a really cool idea. And something worth exploring. Maybe it does work better for something bite-sized and puzzle-shaped like Death Crown, but it seems like an idea worth picking up and dusting off. Patrick, did you get into anything this weekend? I know that weekends tend not to be your peak gaming hours, but
the opposite. No, I didn't play too much new this weekend, but I one of the games that I was part of the two that I started and finished over the holiday when I had time to myself was I finally got around to playing Echoes of the Eye, the DLC for Outer Wilds, playing it in a similar fashion to how I played Outer Wilds, which is to play it right after I could give it any real consideration for the games of the year. I don't know. The long and short is I don't know that it would have changed anything that was on my list. I think Echoes of the Eye is Outer Wilds for people, it's been a couple years now. Really go read Dawson's review. It's an exceptional piece of writing, but Outer Wilds is a kind of a space exploration game. It's a time loop game in which you are trying to figure out why the universe is ending every 15 minutes or so. I forget the exact amount of time
it's like
that happens in the game.
Yeah,
21 minutes. Yeah, it's a little bit longer. You get a decent chunk of time to explore. And in the original base game of Outer Wilds, you look at a statue which imbues you with this special power, wherein you can then go back in from the start of the loop and either go back and explore the area you were before, go explore somewhere else. Like, part of the beauty of the original Outer Wilds is that there are 1,000 different things you could be doing at once, so that if you were getting frustrated or not making progress in one area that could lead you to some big revelation or to kind of put a check mark past a certain spot you were exploring, there was always something else for you to do. And that was kind of the beauty of that game, was hey, it's all puzzles, but if you're bored with this one, it's okay. There's another thing for you to go work on. And it was frequently the case that you'd find something over there that would then inform something, it was just a masterclass in game design. And even as someone that has a kind of love-hate relationship with games that are puzzle-centric, I found myself really, really taken by the themes of Outer Wilds, what it has to say about life and living and, sort of accepting, not really fate, but just sort of where things are at, taking stock of that and appreciating what you have before the next thing happens. And not really a game that you get to the end and go, what they need to do is expand
this is
universe.
The thing where I've been nervous.
And what I'll say about Echoes of the Eye is of course, a smart team that faced with their problem would look you in the eye and say, well, I'll take that dare. Because what it does do to the broader lore world building of Outer Wilds is tremendous. Without giving too much away about what's happening, basically if you load back into the original game, something changes in this new museum that is now present. It doesn't take place before or after. It's essentially adds something that occurs concurrently, as though it was there the entire time to the base game. And you eventually come across this, you solve some puzzles. You come across this thing called the Stranger, which is a very it's a spaceship that has a very Halo-esque design. It is you come into this place and you look around and you just see a circle and you can see the entire area that you're going to be exploring. from a certain point of view, is what I will say, without getting to too much of how the game ends up kind of playing out. But it is a very Halo sort of like aesthetic, at least from like the nature of like the space that you're inhabiting. And you know, I ended up quite liking Echoes of the Eye, but it was the case where I never found myself overly frustrated with the structure of Outer Wilds. I found that I always had other things to do, and that the things that I couldn't figure out went so far above my head that when I would consult a guide, it never felt like the game was being condescending, like the game was expecting too much to me. I sort of like met it where I was at, and I was able to kind of like muddle forward. But it was also delightful that you could go do something else, because that was frequently the issue, is like banging your head at an area with a timer going down constantly in real time. That can make it extremely frustrating to put yourself in the headspace to think creatively about what you should do. And the way Outer Wilds got around that was, again, letting you go somewhere else and giving your brain space to think about something else, giving you a clue. This is not the case where like it would be very strange to play Echoes of the Eye alongside the main game, because there's nothing about this expansion that suggests you should come here once for 20 minutes and then go do something else. Like, this is its own 8 to 10 hour adventure. It is its own game. Like, it does exist here. It adheres to the rules of the 20-minute loop. But whereas other times it was like, I'm going to kind of just duck in here, kind of poke around, see what's going on. Like, no, like you come into the stranger, you're here to see the stranger, and you're going to want to finish what's happening here. And I found that to be extremely frustrating, because within the scope of the stranger, it does try to do the thing that Outer Wilds does broadly well, of here's a bunch of different things you could be doing at once. And that is true for like 2 hours. And then it becomes abundantly clear, you have a bunch of information. Now you just need to dial in on these puzzles. And then once you dial in on that puzzle, there's a puzzle within that puzzle, and it just gets narrower and narrower and narrower. And the way they've structured how the stranger operates, there are things that occur that like require the time loop to exist. And so it is not as simple as the solution just being, well, hey, what if they just waved a wand and, you know, you could just be in there and like have the time loop not apply? Because they've structured the world, the environment, and some of the puzzles to require that. And that's, I like that, because that's part of the, like, I think the design brilliance of Outer Wilds, and what made it so interesting and special was how all that stuff connected and occurred in parallel. But for one, you can't just warp there. So it's like when you start the time thing over, it's like, well, I just need to be in the stranger again. That's what I'm doing. I'm not playing the rest of the game. I'm just doing this expansion. And it's like, cool, start the time loop over, get in my ship, set the waypoint, head over there, dock the ship.
No.
And then once I'm in the stranger, well, I'm going to give a mild, this is not a spoiler because it's like the premise when you get on the stranger. So skip ahead if you're worried about even like basic ideas of how it works. But like you get in and there's a bunch of water. There's a river that runs through this like Halo structure. It's so beautiful and cool. And right behind you when you get in is like a dam. And what you realize once you go through the loop once is that dam is going to burst. And a lot of the game is like going to different points along this river, stopping in at different spots, and those are the different places you're exploring and putting together the story of like what happened on this ship and why things went so wrong. Because things have gone wrong here well before the universe is about to implode. So like it's just like this kind of tragic story that's happening out in parallel to a larger tragic story that is happening to the universe. And so there'd be moments where like I'm like roughly what would be halfway through this DLC, and it's like, cool, I gotta get in my ship, like spawn back in, get to the ship, set the waypoint, go to the ship, dock the ship, get off the ship, like go to this like raft that I have to navigate for 2 or 3 minutes to get to the one spot to get to the other. There were just so many things I had to do that were perfunctory, that weren't interesting, that weren't engaging, just to get back to what I was doing before the loop was over. And it made it to the point where I sort of did everything that was in my power that wasn't frustrating, and then just pulled up a guide and was like, I'm not going to follow the walkthrough. But what I'm not going to do is get to a point where I start panicking over like, have I done everything I need to do in this room? Because to get back to this point, would suck. Like, it would not be fun or interesting. There's no other tangents for me to do. It's not like I can be like, well, it's okay. Because frequently what you would do in Outer Wilds when you were reaching a similar point was like, well, yes, I need to wait till I get 16 minutes in or whatever to the loop to do the thing I want to do to make progress. But as I get to that point, there's like 3 other things I can do. And like, I'm also checklisting that stuff along the way. That just ceases to be the case in Echoes of the Eye, where it's like, it is singularly, I need to do this thing to explore this one bit. And that got just incredibly frustrating, where it's like, all I wanted was a quick save. Like, send me back, Captain. Like, put me here. So having a guide handy proved useful, because there were like 2 different points where I'd reach, I could hear the little, the lovely music cue that I used to love, and then was actually like a herald of danger that this loop was going to end. So it was nice, like, pause the game, pull up the walkthrough, and the walkthrough says, you've done it. Like, you've seen everything here. Or like, hey, there's one more thing you should do. And it's like, cool, go do that thing. And what was so frustrating about it was like, at least 2 of like the coolest revelations that happen in this game that are all-timers, just incredible masterclass and like a reveal, changing how you view everything around you that I was incapable of discovering naturally, because I was so panicked that I was going to have to make it back to this point. And it is compounded by all the things I've said, and that also about halfway through this game, this has been communicated publicly, like, it has stealth horror elements, and they suck. And they're not fun.
That was my next question. I was like, does that go?
No, it doesn't at all. It would if it were untethered from the structure that it exists in, right? Like, it would not be. I understand what they were going for, of like, wow, like, you're trying to accomplish thing. You've got this timer ticking in the background, and you're also trying to navigate this like spooky little thing. When you find out why it's spooky and like the nature of that world, like, all that shit would get me. I would love to have an Outer Wilds DLC discussion so I could go back to a place where I feel incredible about it. Because like, the actual mechanics of like what I was doing, I found to be so profoundly frustrating in a way that didn't totally sour it, because the walkthrough kind of allowed me to like tune those objects back to a point where I could keep progressing. But it was frustrating because I felt like it was undercutting these incredibly smart narrative ideas that they had, and these incredibly smart design like revelations, like genuine, like I mean, like, Cado, if you get around to playing it, like, it will be so fucking obvious what I'm talking about when you experience it multiple times. Like, they have moments where you just go, you have to be kidding me. Yeah. Like, this game is operating at like a galaxy brain level of how it layers its ideas. That got me past a lot of the frustrations, even if I was like deeply irritated that I didn't get to experience them genuinely. And like many puzzle things, that will scale along. How do puzzles click for you? Like, how quickly does that stuff come? But I just, I guess my concluding point would be like, I was just frustrated by my inability to spend the time to get to that point, because the game's urgency, I found, undercut experiencing those moments naturally and organically. I guess I never felt super rushed playing Outer Wilds. There was a clock, but I didn't feel rushed until I did the final runs, where I was like, this is what the game is. And then you were kind of sweating, putting it all together. Whereas here, I was stressing and sweating what should have just been like fun exploratory moments. And that's just, the feels like that runs up against like what the game is celebrating and like trying to push the player towards in general. So it's really, really good, but I'm not shocked that I've like read a lot of people being like, I just looked up they watched a Let's Play instead of experiencing themselves, because it was just, it felt like the things that don't work about Outer Wilds, or the tension they have there, just like ratcheted to 11. And then it just increases the ability for you to kind of be done with it, which is too bad. Because again, I think some of the ideas here are even smarter than the ideas they had in the original, which was already a work of genius. Yeah.
Because I remember I'm catching up on some of the Nextlander stuff, and I remember toward like the end of last year, they had this conversation where it's like, I have perfect memories of this game, not like good memories, but like it was a perfect experience. Mm-hmm. And there's this trepidation around like, and now I'm going to go and see new stuff that is like appended to this perfect experience. And like, with the caveat that like there's good stuff here, and they did some really like there is some exceptional design happening here. Are you happier than you were when you didn't when you hadn't played this? Like, do you kind of wish you'd encased the experience in Lucite? No.
No, I think it is a net positive. Like what it's like, how it like sets up more stuff about like the broader world, what was happening in the events about like I think all that stuff is great, is worth it. It's more than like giving people a heads up on like how because it's difficult to tell in a game that is built around puzzles. And this game has a hint system, right? Like one of the smartest things the original game has is that, you know, like the guidance, like the console that you can access, that as you are experiencing major events in the game, it is taking notes for you and connecting them to one another on this chart. And also that chart does a good job of communicating, like it breaks the fourth wall, right? Like it says like there is more to explore here, so that you know, okay, I thought I'd kind of seen everything in this area, but I guess I need to poke and prod a little bit more. Or there's a big question mark that's like, hey, the things that all these ideas and evidence here is pointing towards this big thing that you need to try and put together or figure out over in this space. And all that stuff is here too. I just didn't feel like it worked nearly as well. But the highs here are so incredibly high that I feel like it's the kind of game that I really wish I'd been playing with someone. Like if I was doing it on a stream, I bet I probably would have had a lot more enjoyment, because like on my own, isolated, bouncing ideas off myself, running out of ideas on what to do next. I think if I had had a partner, someone to like kind of do the mental shifts with, that probably would have gotten over some of those humps faster and then been able to experience the highs more organically.
Should have streamed that shit.
I should have. I thought about it, and then I was like,
plus stretch goals. Patrick will have better experiences with games by setting time aside to stream with a partner.
But the whole point was I was playing this game for my personal enjoyment. I was like, I'll talk about it on a podcast because I'll need to. But like, I'm choosing to take the only
leaping as you return from outer wilds.
I know
they should have sent a streamer.
They should have sent a streamer. I think I would have had more fun with the game. But it is incredibly good. It's on, and the reason I wanted to bring it up was that because it's on. Do we figure out, Cado, if the expansion's on Game Pass, or is it just the base game?
I did not figure that.
We had this conversation. Echoes of the Eye Game Pass.
Early January Xbox Game Pass titles include.
I think it's just the base game.
Oh,
it's GameSpot article. It's unclear if Echoes of the Eye included the Game Pass version of the game. Well, either way, the base game is on Game Pass, and I would if you're gonna dive in, haven't done either, like I would recommend doing the main Outer Wilds game, seeing that ending, and then if you do do Echoes of the Eye separately. I didn't do this, I just looked it up afterwards, but then there are impacts of, you can bring the experiences of Echoes of the Eye, add it to your final run in Outer Wilds, and have an impact on the ending of it doesn't like wildly change it, but it does tweak it in a way that if you've played the end of Outer Wilds, you can imagine like some things that might shift as a result of doing things a little bit differently. So yeah, Outer Wilds still like one of the best video games ever made. Echoes of the Eye, not quite that, but still like a spectacular a work. More just one that it feels like they had a bunch of leftover ideas, or I don't know how they came over, but like it didn't fit quite in the structure of the Outer Worlds as it seemed fit. That said, if they had literally just given me the ability to start on the Stranger, I think it would have. I probably would have enjoyed. I probably could have gotten over more of the humps faster. It's like cool. Like of the 10 hours I spent playing Echoes of the Eye, I probably spent an hour navigating to the Stranger, and like that's bad.
It looks like it's not on Game Pass, but it's discounted if you have Game Pass.
Okay, well,
so
there you go.
Yeah.
I should take advantage of that more often. See, this is the warped incentives of Game Pass, where I'm like, no, I refuse to pay anything with Game Pass. And it's like, we'll give you discounts. And I'm like, no, I refuse. If you truly want me to play this, you would simply give it to me.
I'm going to wait you out.
Well, the base game's included, so you would only be paying $15.
Oh, well, there you go.
Yeah, base game is Game Pass. Just the DLC is $13.49 right now. Little $1.50 discount.
And maybe you'll get to the end of Outer Wilds and not want to play more, which is how I felt. Even as much as I liked Echoes of the Eye, but boy, if you did not play Outer Wilds, you missed out on something special. That's definitely something.
Yeah,
worth.
You should go play Outer Wilds.
Yeah. Yes. Well, Rob, we can't go to the break without talking about this Armored Core news. Austin, we thought this was a joke.
I thought it was a scam. Yeah, I did.
Just like, look, there's so much talk about NFTs right now that, all of a sudden
it's a rug pull. Yeah.
Someone says they're out here selling images of an Armored Core game that may or may not be in development, and I just don't know. I don't know what I'm buying.
Listen. So there was a post on Reset Era. Someone was like, "Hey, I got an email from
Red Licorice.
Licorice. Yeah, you're right.
Not Licorice is in the air. Licorice Pizza out here as a movie. And then
I overheard someone saying someone else looked like they ate a lot of licorice the other day. It was not like a weight joke. It was like a personality type of thing, and I was like, I don't know what that means.
Yeah, I don't know what the personality of a licorice.
I don't know,
and not even just a licorice eater, but someone that is like really like off the licorice deep end. I don't know.
I don't know either. I just overhear stuff here in New York. I'm just walking around and just hearing shit that's like
you're gonna be on the what is that How To with John Wilson, the HBO show.
Yeah,
Have you watched that? Like you could do that.
I could do that.
I could do that.
Listen, the best thing I've ever heard. Truly, the other day I was walking past one of those like huge lines in New York of people waiting for COVID tests, because that's just what it's like here right now. They're
not. Those people are not following Wario64 on Twitter.
They are not.
Like I am, who has bought 4 or 5 packs of antigen tests. By doing so.
And this dude had his phone out in his hand, like talking on speakerphone, right? Just surrounded by people. And he was like, I can't call her any time of the day without it seeming like I'm trying to get ass. And perception shapes reality. So, and I was like, all right, there's like 3 different conversations happening on various levels here. This is an incredible moment. I'm going to keep moving. Anyway, that's how it is out here. Anyway, the key here is Recent Era, Red Licorice made this post that was like, hey, I got a customer survey, basically a consumer survey about a new Armored Core game.
How do you get those? How do you get on? Is that just like I subscribe to a Bandai Namco newsletter, and then like I don't know. I know those happen.
I feel like I've gotten one once ever, and it was for some shit. This is the thing, is like we probably get them. We just don't care about the things they are because they're not FromSoft.
I guess so. I guess that's true.
Like if you got a new one that was, this is the thing, is like if it was Dynasty Warriors, you would just tell me that you got a Dynasty Warriors one.
See, I feel like I'm just out here like, do you want to give a consumer survey on your experience at the Pep Boys? Like that's what I'm getting in my inbox.
Yes. I get them from when I go to waypoint.vice.com, and Vice is like, can we ask you some questions about if we could launch a weed vertical? And I'm like, are we really doing this? Are y'all really doing this? Okay. Yeah. Ask me some questions. I'll give you some answers.
Time is a flat circle.
It really is. Anyway, that post said, there's screenshots of this text, right?
And video, and I believe the person saw some video.
The person says they saw some video. They saw 2 video clips, and they said they saw like 16 different screenshots. And the description of the game that they had was basically, it's open world Souls Armored Core. It's Armored Souls, right? It's a sci-fi world by Miyazaki. It's a vast field, quote unquote. It has long and short range battles.
you know it's a Souls game if they're using the term vast
field. Yeah.
Was he deeply involved in the Armored Core games, or is this
he wasn't not from like the jump, but he was on 4, and I want to say 4 Answer, which is like the pseudo sequel. It's a sequel to 4. And I don't know if he'd been on. I don't know if he was on them as far back as 2 or 3. Okay, he joined in 2004 working on the Armored Core series. So 2004 would have been around AC2 PS2, I want to say.
And that's
Nexus. That would have been like the late PS2 era ones.
Okay.
And then going into the PS3, and Xbox 360 ones, which are.
Because I have not. Armored Core started on PS1, right?
It started on PS1, and it lived in that way that games could live in the PS1 and PS2 era, where like you didn't have to do that much in terms of sales to like justify yourself. And so even though it was a niche game, you know, those games are just cheaper to make, and you can just make more of them. I think
a bunch of them were put out by like for a long time had a partnership with. It started as ASCII Software and then became Age Tech. And
yes.
I think that's how you pronounce their name. And they're that publisher like was one of like a number of like boutique publishers back in the day, kind of like a Working Designs, where you could pluck. This is before every game from Japan came out, and so they were a studio that would like just like pluck these games. They could sell what they needed to sell to justify their existence, and the companies were small enough that they didn't need to be bajillion sellers. They could just like, yeah, we turned a profit, like go make another Armored Core and we'll publish it.
I have played the majority of the Armored Core games. Like there were a couple of the PS2 era ones I didn't play through, but you know, I was playing like the PSP ones where you're programming, you know, you're not programming, but you're doing like AI controlled mechs and making them fight each other in an arena. You know, I was like really into the series. For people who don't know, they're not very much like the Souls games. They're mission based. They are tend to be pretty short in terms of comparison to other Souls or other FromSoft games, at least, where you're talking about 8 to 12 hours for the main campaign, maybe 15 to 20 if you're doing side stuff. You're dropping into a mission, you're building a mech based on what you think the mission is going to be, or maybe you just
and the customization is like such a huge part.
So that's
of
the thing. You could totally play these games, and I did for hundreds of hours, if you really get deep into the customization, and especially with 4 and 5, there was a huge online component. They really got online right. It's funny to go watch footage from these games because I really don't think that they look good, but when you're playing them, there is such a sense of like what the mech is supposed to feel like. 4 is really fast and rapid, and you're just like flying all over the place. Your mech is almost like not even on screen. It's like at the edge of the screen because you're just like boosting around. And then 5 are these like much heavier, stompier things, and there's layer upon layer of complex, mechanics, and I don't know that they look good to watch if you don't know what the fuck is going on in them, but they're great. And so when this first post came out, I was like, I'm excited to go back to Armored Core. I don't believe this at all. There's a bit at the top where it's like melange, an unknown substance that could dramatically advance human society. Like melange is another word for spice from Dune. This is just something.
Oh no!
I was like, this is just fake. This is just someone just
also
decided.
Melange. I believe that's also the name of the opening area of Dark Souls 2, right?
Is that no? That's Majula.
No, it's not. It's not.
Majula. I was about to get mad. I was like, wait, is Patrick pulling over on me?
You thought about it for a second.
I did.
Though.
Yes. And so I was like super dismissive of this. I don't know about you, but I was like, okay, one person makes a post,
Well, and also the Sci-Fi Souls, the like Armored Core reboot has something that's been kind of like kicking around.
Right.
I feel like when Miyazaki's been asked in the past, he's like, yeah, like of course we'd want to like Armored Core is like so like key to like the existence of From today, like only is because of like the success of like games like Armored Core in the past, but we have not seen. Like any attempt at that since Souls became popular.
There was a time when like a few 100,000 sales could have been huge, right?
Right.
I want to say Armored Core 5 launched on the PS3 and got like 200,000 sales in Japan or something. And that was considered a success at the time for the Armored Core series because that was better than what a lot of Armored Core games had done. That's nothing compared to what the Souls games did, right? Sekiro did like 5 mil or something, right? The times have just changed in such a way that like, Armored Core 4 and 5 were kind of failures in terms of sales data or sales in the United States. They just did not find an audience here. So
mechs in general have like in video games, like, obviously like you and I did like that indie stream, like when we play, like, like there was that, like, I mean, like mechs, like there, people are making games.
People like
with
games
mechs,
with mechs, but
they have fallen out of favor on like the certain budget scale for whatever reason.
I suspect the last, like, you get those breakout ones, right? You get the BattleTech, which was a really great tactics game, and Into the Breach, right? Which is like that game is just fantastic.
But I feel like tactics exists like.
Totally,
off on its own
100%.
thing.
The sort of like AAA-ish or like big budget mech game does not truly exist the way it used to. MechWarrior 5 Mercenaries was like okay, but like, and I think that got a console release eventually, but that wasn't moving the needle the way that you could just have them in the mix in the past.
Side note, do you have an opinion on Chrome Hounds, which everyone says is
Very
like the
big
secret
Chrome
best
Hounds.
from
Love Chrome
okay,
Hounds.
all right.
Just great illustration of how the designers there were always thinking about cool new shit. So much we could do an hour on Chrome Hounds passive.
Okay,
like,
all right.
Truly,
that tells me all I need to know.
You couldn't talk to your team unless you had someone on your team who had a dedicated comms array.
Oh wow!
Attached to their.
Austin, are you sure you weren't making games 15 years ago?
I played so much Chrome Hounds. I had like a big meta campaign of like multiplayer 3-sided war factions.
Well, I've heard it was like the ultimate online.
It really was.
Game.
It was one of those things that was like, it felt so built out of, okay, Xbox Live is a thing now. How do we take advantage of this in the coolest way possible? And they did. And the fact that it doesn't exist anymore is a bummer. Anyway, so I doubted this all weekend. I think you and I both were kind of skeptical at the very least. I was all the way to like, this is just bullshit. This is just someone trying to get one over on me. And today, some screenshots appeared.
Yeah, the same person who I think has been enjoying reading their posts. Like, seems very genuine. Like, doesn't seem like someone trying to throw. But they're I think like Eurogamer like wrote a piece based on this without any sort of like added. Frequently, what'll happen is like I think it'll come out like reporting. There are a couple ways like reporting like and confirming things can work. Is like sources are so much more willing to give you confirmation on a thing when they're not ground zero. Yeah. So like when something like this breaks, it's a lot easier to go to someone who'd be in the know and be like, hey, can you just like tell me it's true, so that you can add a line that says, and Waypoint has confirmed with a source that like echoes the same details. Eurogamer didn't do that, and actually Eurogamer, that's frequently what they do with a lot of this stuff is like, hey, this thing maybe sounds like bullshit. Actually is real. But they kind of ran with that. And then this person who's like sitting on screenshots and videos that they have is like, I don't know. They're watermarked, everyone. Like, what am I supposed to do?
What do I do? Yeah.
And then this morning, like, was like, it's a bad sign when they said, I'm not a Photoshop master, which is me just going, oh, you're probably not going to get sued over this. Like, I'm sure anyone that does a consumer survey understands there is a decent to high likelihood that like basic details are going to get leaked, which may be part of the process, which is like, here is a reasonable way that we can kind of like get out some details and gauge interest. Right. But the screenshots look real. I thought the thing we were trying to figure out was like, what does this say about what the game is? And you had some interesting comments about the shield that I thought were...
I've like spun all the way around. I went from like, this is complete bullshit, to be like, oh no, yeah, everything this person said is 100% true, because of like, broad interpretation of the way screenshots look with my relationship to Armored Core games, right? So like there are 16 screenshots, four screenshots of 4 screenshots, and the second set is the top left is a mech, hiding behind a shield, facing down a slightly bigger mech. The top right is a mech shooting up at a much larger kind of super robot, or not super robot, to be clear to people who use that terminology, but like a bigger squared off robot. The bottom left one is like your mech doing a cool like sword slash, and the bottom right one is again hiding behind the shield as incoming fire comes from the distance. And these all look like Demon Souls screenshots to me. Like, you could totally mount that top right one to the Tower Knight in terms of scale. All of the ways that like the shield is being held out in the left hand. They
have a way of
shield.
capturing how their games look, and those screenshots neatly line up with the way they've done that.
And the way that they look in Souls. Armored Core games don't feel like this, right? They're third-person shooters technically, but they're not third-person shooters in the way that you or I might think about a third-person shooter like Uncharted, or even like something like Revenant, which has Souls-like elements. They're not like you point and aim. Your mech has a field of vision, which is modifiable based on the parts you equip, that changes how far away and how wide their like viewing angle is, and how close you have to be to automatically lock onto your targets. Yes, there are shields, for instance, but they're not shields you would show in a screenshot, let alone multiple screenshots.
Are they in Armored Core? Are shields physical? as opposed to energy.
Like it depends on the game. Five had
all
physical shields, but the previous ones all had energy shields. So like this
Okay,
energy shield looks like something that could have been in the past Armored Core game, but the way it's being held out like this as like a key part of how you engage with the world is just
and like
so
the attacks
not-
look at this.
Yes.
Look at this slash that is clearly you hitting R1 to
that
do like a
slash
fast attack.
is a diagonal from the vertical left down to the vertical right, like it's a sword slash, which is 100% not what sword slashes or blade slashes are like in Armored Core. In Armored Core, they're always just this big, long, kind of horizontal sweep. That is, that's a thing that will show up in a Souls game, but that's what every blade attack looks like in Armored Core. And so this is not Armored Core style slashing. This is Soul style slashing. And I think you take that along with some of the other screenshots that are clearly like, look at this big environment that you're flying around and potentially exploring. I start to believe the hype of the description of this being, quote, a vast field that represents a multi-layered world that you can feel the scale of the mecha universe, blah, 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 blah. So I'm bought in. I'm now 100%. All this text is right. I see it. I feel it. It's real. I guess it doesn't say here it's going to be called Armored Core, huh?
No, I mean it's a good name. I feel like you could.
Yeah, it's a good name.
But also, Sekiro is Tenchu, right? Like that is
right.
So I also
sure.
I think would not be shocked if it moved in a. Oh, is Tenchu owned by From or is Tenchu owned
Tenchu's
by?
owned by? But remember, that was the thing. Like I think is Tenchu owned by Activision and they still didn't use it.
I can't remember. Well, that might be that might be the case. I think Activision took over building. Like they made some of those games after From stopped making.
I
can't remember at this point, but I wouldn't be shocked if like the genesis, like the origin story of this game is similar to Sekiro. It's like, hey, this is what we have teams that are built to make these types of games. Like the Armored Core team has not just been like sitting around prototyping for 15 years. Like
they're working on a thing.
Like, well, or that talent has left to go work at other studios.
Yes,
I think people
yes.
were doing some of the looking up the credits of the old games.
The Demon Ex Machina people are ex Armored Core people, right? Like the people move on, like that just happens.
And so it would make sense that like this team, don't do something that fits within like the spirit of like what the studio has been built to do. And so I wouldn't be shocked if this is the same sort of thing. Like, what are we good at, and then how do we fuse it with this other thing that we have to do something new?
Yeah, I think it's very funny that you'll find people who are like, fuck this, I can't believe they're going to turn Armored Core into a Souls game. And it's like, obviously I'm biased because I'm a big Souls fan and a big Armored Core fan, and for me this has been like the thing I've been asking for 10 years or something.
I spent so much time throwing poisoned rice balls in Tenchu. It was like one of the first games that like me and my brother got like.
And again, that was a mission-based
game.
game. That was a mission-based game.
Yeah, very similar to
100%.
Like for early From has like on the one hand like the weird open like RPGs like Kingsfield.
Yeah.
And then they're off doing these like much more structured experiences like Tenchu and Armored Core,
which are about how do I want to go about this? How do I want to solve these problems, basically? And that's where the replayability comes in and stuff like that. And so for me though, I can't imagine them releasing in 2022 or 2023. This game's not coming out this year. A mission-based 12-hour-long game at this point without people not liking it, and being disappointed by it. And it's really hard to greenlight a project that is like that niche when you have certain expectations at that point,
Unless like the budget is such a scale that you're like competing with like the Sonys of the world, where it's like, hey, what we intend to make are like cinematic, interactive movies with game elements. Like that's sounding overly disparaging to those types of games that I frequently like playing, but I just feel like that's not what From does.
That's not what they do. It's not what they do well. That team builds big open world games well at this point, or not open world in the traditional, not in the Elden Ring sense even, but like exploration focused action RPGs.
Yeah, I would be shocked. I'd be shocked if this game wasn't like closer in design world design DNA to a Demon Souls or a Dark Souls, whereas like Elden Ring is them.
I don't expect
these
big open areas in the same way. I expect either like the hub and spoke system of 2 or Demon Souls, or the clockwork connected stuff of 1. But like I don't expect the big open fields of I mean, it does say open field.
It does, and then that also makes me wonder, like, what are you?
That could be a
am I
Crisis
piloting
2
this
style. I'm in a hallway, and then I'm in a big open space, and then I'm in a hallway. You know what I mean?
Right.
The Crisis 2 model that we all know and love. Deeply underrated game, IMO. Anyway.
And then it just makes me wonder, like, what does exploration in a game like that even mean if you're probably not getting out of that mech. Like, what am I
You're probably
doing?
not getting out. I would love. I mean, that's the dream for me. Is the one where like you get to the facility and then you hop out of your mech and you also have a second character sheet that is just your character.
Well, yeah, we like what we're working towards is like you bring back Armored Core. They figure out how to build open worlds with Elden Ring, and then the new dream is like, well, you already gave us the old dream, and you're not giving me Bloodborne on PC or a 60 FPS update. So I feel like you need to, Elden Mech, and we're mashing up these two worlds and getting the best of both. Oh my god, yeah! You roll up to a small cave that your mech can't get into.
You come out of the mech cockpit via like a little like rope that drops down. And you slide down and you like pick up your laser sword or whatever. Like, let's go! It's great. I'm ready for it.
So I guess if it's in a consumer survey, I wouldn't be shocked if this is something we like heard about. There was this is me just spitballing, but I remember when with the Game Awards happening this year, Keeley gave some interview that was like really enjoyed being able to like show people Elden Ring for the first time. Very excited to do more things with From in the future. And that seemed almost knowing. And so I will not be shocked if
me either.
This game is like one of the premier, like, his new I'm burying E3 in a coffin summer Game Fest thing. My guess is that's where we hear about this.
I can imagine that. That's not that far off, unfortunately, in terms of the way the time works.
We are well into where like a Sekiro 2 like could be shown. Totally. It is a exciting time. Like it's the thing about COVID. Well, there's many things about COVID, but it's sort of like it's going to squash time in other ways where it's like, oh, all of a sudden we're going to have studios like From Software who got squeezed by like figuring out how to make a game over the course of 18 months or finish a game. Like, well, those other teams have been doing stuff and like they're probably going to be ready to start showing what those things are like throughout 2022. And that shit's exciting.
It's exciting.
Let's go. All right. Well, thank you, Rob. I appreciate you giving me the tangent. I think we can take a break now.
And we're back. I don't know what you've just heard. I'm sure it was scintillating.
No, you were there. We were all there.
You were there, and you were there.
The magic of podcasting is that it's flat, and that means we were all there when all conversations happen.
Just didn't have a lot to say about Armored Core screenshots.
Yeah, that's not. Look, I wasn't talking about the strategy game earlier. Like, I don't need to interject.
Doesn't even remember the
Rob
name.
got this. Death Game. That's a very cute art.
Oh, yeah, close, that's what it is. It's Death Game. My favorite genre, in fact. And while you're having that conversation, my brief high about Chicago Bears began to wane as reactions began to filter out from the Bears beat reporters covering the press conference, and there's a few people who are like, "Uh-oh, their process for hiring these two critical positions seems kind of fucked up."
Yeah.
And so, they brought an antique consultant out of retirement to help them to build the Bears into a modern, high-flying NFL team. After all, somebody who helped the Buffalo Bills be good in the early 90s couldn't possibly have an outmoded view of how modern football ops work today. To be fair, they were, Bill Polian was in at Indy recently as a decade ago, but still, I'm a little nervous, a little scared. I'm starting to get the bad vibes again. Speaking of bad vibes that I wish I didn't have, I'm debating whether I want to stick with Lake. The little game about the lady going back to her hometown.
Being on the post office.
Being a postal worker.
It's not doing it for me.
Yeah,
I wanted to.
Yeah, I came out of that when the demo came out last year. It was one of those games where it's like, yeah, you identify, you want to champion little games are rough around the edges that, try to speak to different kinds of themes you don't see in a lot of games, that downplay things like combat and whatever. And I don't know, I went into that, to that demo wanting to feel that way, and then came out of it, I don't know, not really like vibing on the themes or the world, and was, I guess, kind of hoping for the best with the finished game.
It's a couple things, like, one, the game feel could be better, but I'm like, that sounds like bullshit, but it's kind of not.
The postal truck.
No.
Damn it.
But also the postal truck is not very fun to drive. And
well, you can't drift it. How could it be?
Exactly. But like, this is a game where you're going to be driving this fucking mail route a lot.
Yeah.
And it's not, and the weird thing is, like, I actually don't think it's because, like, it's not that, like, okay, I can't drift it or I can't do like six stunts in the postal truck. Because I think we've all had experiences where, like, we enjoy playing games sometimes in ways that are the most, like, fussy and law-abiding way possible. Like when I play like Flight Simulator, for instance, I take a deep satisfaction in flying the most professional and buttoned up like route possible.
I could be a pilot
rather than like, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And so like, I am used to like sort of a boring route proceduralism, but I think part of what a game has to do is uncover what is kind of meditative or satisfying about like even kind of a rote repetitive job. And this doesn't really do that. Like the truck isn't particularly fun to drive. The little thing you're doing in your head of like figuring out what your route is going to look like isn't particularly interesting to do as you're sort of solving a pathing problem for yourself each day. It's just not, that stuff is not clicking for me. But the thing that would really have to hold it together is that I'd have to be invested in this setting and these characters a bit. And I'm just not getting there. Like I can't.
Doesn't give you enough setup, or
I don't have a feeling for the character I'm playing. Like she seems like a sketch of an archetype, but not close to being a fully realized character. And I think maybe some of this is the voice acting, but honestly, it's also one of those cases where I don't think the voice acting would be jumping out at me as much if the script, both in terms of the way the lines are written, but also the structure, weren't really hanging together. Like the setup is that you're this character that it's a period piece. It's like the mid 80s. And you are working in like the early days of the tech boom. And you're burning out. You go home to cover your dad's mail route while your family is on vacation. And supposedly, like the game is sort of trying to like, it keeps trying to drive you toward this framework of what your character is doing is trying to figure out what she's going to do with her life while she's out there. Like you're sort of hiding out from your shitty little tech job and maybe trying to figure out like what you really value and what you want to do. But it's not selling me on that as a dilemma. Like, you know what I mean? I understand the dilemma intellectually. Nothing about the script makes me feel it. And I'm a sucker for stories like this. You know what I mean? Like, Eliza is one of my favorite games of the last like 10 years. And that is entirely about, it's entirely a visual novel about someone sort of confronting what was I a part of? What am I going to do next? Where do I want my life to stand in relation to these things? Here, it doesn't feel like it's holding back interesting information. It's just not selling me on the premise at all. And so like, as I'm going through this and like these little story beats where my character's sort of hemming and hawing about what like she wants the rest of her life to be, there's just nothing for me to latch onto in terms of like being sold on this as a real dilemma or even a character working through some stuff. And so that makes the rest of this, where you're sort of traveling around town and like having conversations with a very I'm reminded of a Gene Siskel quote, actually. He was talking about Sundance in the mid-90s, where he was like, I feel like every indie film right now is set in a quaint small town filled with the most colorful cast of characters you ever met in your life. And he's like, I'm exhausted of it. And like, that is this town. It has that same feeling.
Right.
And so I'm like, it's just not like, I see kind of what it's trying to do, but like, none of the execution is bringing me on board, really. There are some beats are more effective. Like, I think something that does come through well is you run into one of your old friends, and the thing that like is very convincing is the weird mix of like warmth and like anger you encounter from your friend. For on the one hand, it's good to see you again. On the other hand, you've missed a lot of stuff and a lot of like really important stuff to me, and you were out of the loop on things that are painful and things that like people around here know about, and you just bailed. That stuff like reads as pretty well executed and reasonably convincing, but it's just not weaving together into a compelling like story of this person sort of coming to this crossroads in their life. And so like I'm right on the knife's edge between like, do I keep putting time into this or not?
How much time have you put into it?
Just a couple hours.
Okay, but that's a lot. I mean, like for these types of that, like I don't know, we exist in in a world in which the creators of Dying Light 2 are out here being like, it's gonna take 500 hours to beat our video game, which is like they're definitely measuring that, and it's like, yeah, I guess if I'm getting every single collectible and doing like, sure, fine, whatever. But in a case like that kind of game, like these like kind of like personal games with like rough edges in which you're having to kind of put yourself out there into the game to kind of see what it's going for to some degree. They also, once they start getting into being longish, like it becomes harder and harder to sort of like sustain that if the game's not giving you enough to kind of grasp onto in the meantime.
Yeah, I should just walk away then.
No, I feel like this conversation has been like, you're not hard to convince. It's like the opposite of Cado.
Yeah.
It's like, you know what? Rob, if you drop this, you'll go find something else. I believe in you. But
I will.
I have kind of gotten that vibe from other folks who have, like, that game was on my list of like games to check out before the year was up, and then I don't know, like the kind of vibe checked like enough impressions from people that I trusted. It was like, I think I'm all right, which is too bad because it's also cool to see games like that are aiming for stories like that to, there's nothing wrong with visual novels, but it's cool when you see them in spaces that like have a little more ambition in terms of the or are able to try and bite off a little bit more in terms of like how you're exploring the world. And then it's also tough because like I look at a game like Lake, and then I see like a game like Life is Strange, and it's like I'm getting that already. Like I've got a direct line to like the vibes I want out of games like that, out of a game like Life is Strange: True Colors. And that's I remember around the time when I played True Colors was maybe around the time that I would have played Lake, and it's like I'm good. I have my my hometown feel good, feel sad story out of the way for 2021.
Yeah, that's. Yeah, I think I just needed to put it out there. I was like, I gave
you did
it.
You tried to play the game. You like you really gave it. We're all folks who are always championing for games like that. But sometimes there's a lot of them these days, right? Like that's also the case. Is that there are alongside like my note that I keep every year of games I've played. I try and put when I see like something on Twitter that's like a game I should play. I put that there, and like that list can get shorter, but never disappears. That is the nature of video games these days. Nature of just media these days. Like there is just no way to play everything, and so the moment you take something off your stack, it's not as though you'll be want to find something else to kind of fill it. So
yeah.
And also, isn't that game on Game Pass? This is just a game sponsored by Game Pass.
God damn it.
Well, let's check it out. Like, I mean, I can. It's one of those things where I can easily imagine, and I do know a lot of people I respect put that on their best lists, right? Like,
Okay,
I mean,
all right.
there are people for whom it absolutely resonated. Didn't click with me. I gave it a shot. But yeah, I'm glad it's out there finding people that it speaks to. It just didn't work for me. It is if it's on Game Pass, that's cool. It is also
It is.
$20 on Steam.
Yeah, included on Game
so
Pass.
yeah, and it's got some cute period details. Like it is very chill. So like you know, I didn't hate my time with it. It just didn't quite pull me in either.
I do think though, like that the chill thing can sometimes be like chill doesn't mean. Well, I guess chill can mean a lot of things, but I think sometimes like it still has to be engaging, right? Like just because we got chill vibes, you know, doesn't mean that you can't also kind of like pull people along for the ride. So that's too bad. That game looked promising.
You know what did kind of like pull me in though, really unexpectedly. Naturally, I come to this far too late to affect anything. Every year, for the past 3 or 4 years, I've gotten code to a game called WRC. It is a rally racing game. It is made by, what is it? KT Interactive. KT Racing. And it's a French studio. And it is, so it's a rally racing game. Crucially, it is not the Dirt series, which people have said is increasingly not a rally racing series either. Like Codemasters kind of forked Dirt into Dirt Rally, which is about rally racing, and then Dirt, which is... Anyway, if you don't know about rally racing, it is a... God, it's tough for me to get a sense of scale of like motorsports fandoms because like in the US, your perception of these things gets totally skewed. But rally racing is point-to-point racing on like backcountry roads, right? Like it is set fast times through twisting, often really picturesque and incredibly terrifying, like country roads with massive potential for just life-altering accidents at any moment. What's shocking is those are fairly rare because like the drivers are so on their game that they tend to be able to duck this stuff. But like crucially, it's not like a racetrack where you know, if you're playing like Forza and you're racing at Spa, you know every single corner at Spa intimately. You've memorized that route completely, and you just execute it again and again and again. The point-to-point racing in rally is like, man, you're going to be driving like 20 miles down this like dangerous twisting road. You don't know all that happens. Like, you know, do you know every single twist and turn? Like, you know, in a road near a forest near your house? Not necessarily. So these guys, you know, they race with co-drivers who are sitting there calling out what is coming, so that you can prepare yourself mentally for like what you're going to have to react to. And it's a totally different vibe of racing than stuff like Forza Motorsport or like Project Cars, like circuit racing, because you kind of only have one shot to get it right. And a small misstep, it's not like you just go off on the runoff and then gather the car back up and come back on. If you screw up, like you could literally be like launching the car off a cliff or launching it into into some trees. Anyway, so for years I've been getting this game sort of sent to me. I've just never had time for it. Rally racing is not my thing, even though I know it's huge and you know, it's huge in parts of Europe especially. And there's a weird rally racing to F1 pipeline that operates, but for whatever reason, I decided to give it a shot, and I am utterly charmed. Now, it's too late for WRC because the license has gone to Codemasters, and so I'm a little bit concerned as well because, like, man, is every fucking racing series now partnered up with Codemasters? Like it starts to feel a little bit like there's a racing game monopoly on, where it's just EA buys the licenses, Codemasters buys the studios, and they are your one-stop shop. They've bought some really good studios, but I'm not entirely sure I wouldn't be happier if there were like a bunch of viable racing game studios out there making tons of games around different racing series. But like next year, Rally Racing, the official product, that's going to be Codemasters.
Apparently, it was once Codemasters, and now it's coming home, as they say.
Well, as they say. I'm sure as Codemaster says.
Yeah.
But anyway, point is, so I decided to give it a shot. And first off, it's deliciously weird. Like, its approach to being a racing game appears to be, let's throw Motorsport Manager into your racing game. It's much more of a sports management sim than a lot of other racing games, where it's like, yeah, you should recruit staff, make sure they get rest. Maybe you need to fire your engineer and get a better engineer with better stats. If they get too tired, they start like putting debuffs on the performance of your team. Also, like spend your like skill tokens to like expand the R&D operations for your team. And it's like really abstracted. It's not like remotely reflective of, I think, like the reality of running a racing series, but it's kind of weird and cool and fussy in a way that like you don't see a lot of racing games mess around with. I'm not sure it's like good, but it's like a lot of interesting stuff that's around the game. But the game itself, it really got me, because it's been a while since I played a rally racing game. But the thing that sort of surprised me is that you end up being so hyper attuned to a run. Like, I'm trying to put, superficially, parts of WRC 10 reminded me of like Forza Horizon 5, because like Forza Horizon 5 also has tons of like rally type events, and you're racing across like landscapes and shit. But that game is so forgiving, right? Like the cars are made of rubber. Like they launch themselves 200 feet off a cliff. Well, as long as they land 4 on the floor, they're going to be fine. They're going to bounce for like 60 yards, and then you put the gas down and you're fine. Meanwhile, this thing, if you do that, you're done. You're gonna go off, and you'll have to like reset the car or whatever. And you just don't have that kind of margin for error. And the handling model is actually really, really good. Like, it's one of those things where you can, like, it's tough to describe, but it feels like you can really feel the quality of the different road surfaces and the weird like camber on it. Like, is the road flat or is it like twisted on one side? So the car is kind of unsettled. And how's that going to affect you heading in the next turn? So the entire thing feels really like lively and vibrant, but also it's like tense enough that sometimes, like Danielle and I would talk about, like when we played a lot of Forza, we would sort of slip into this like meditative flow state and just sort of reel off the laps. This is different. It's more like if you're in a really like you've been having trouble with a boss in a Souls game. There's that moment you're starting to break through, and you start to like lean forward, and you realize like this might be it. Like, this might be the run.
That's the worst.
Like,
that you don't know. You have to suppress that feeling. You have to throw it away.
Right.
No, I'm bad at this. Sit back. You know what? Chill like I'm in the game Lake. And just, don't know. I'm not going to beat this. That's the moment.
But even so, like, you realize, like, you're not blinking anymore. You know what I mean? Your eyes are burning. You just haven't blinked. And you're like, why does my face hurt? Because I stopped blinking. That's how like some of these runs feel. And this game gets that across really, really well, where like you're going through these really complicated twisting routes, and there are so many dangers, and there's so many ways to completely like fuck up your run. But at the same time, you're in such a reactive mode, and you are just like, it's not like a circuit lap where it's like, exactly what the corner coming up is and how to attack it. It's like you'll have an inkling of what it looks like not exactly know. And then you just have to nail it based on like having only a second or two to prepare and react. It's really, really cool. And I'm kind of like getting hooked on it because it is such a shot of like pure adrenaline in a way. Like when you are like the event that really won me over was they have some historic racing events where and it's really cool the way they do this. It's not just that they have an historic car. It's that they will be like, let's go back to rally racing in like the 1960s or something like that. And it's a bit like an Art of Rally thing where it's like all the vintage signage is there. The crowd looks different and it's wearing like 60s styles, like flower children are up there like waving flares as your car whips by. So the entire thing has like kind of a cool throwback vibe, but then also like the old cars feel completely wild and really dicey. And the other thing they do really well is, and I didn't realize the degree to which like Forza kind of does this. To make its sense of scale work, like Forza Horizon ends up kind of flattening terrain, right? Like where you go up really picturesque mountains, but if you really think about it, like elevation change doesn't matter that much, right? Like the tallest mountain in the game is actually not really that far from like the lowest beach, right? You know, there's hills, there's valleys and such, but like it all kind of undulates very smoothly. The first like throwback event I did in WRC 10 was something called the Acropolis Rally, which is like an event in Greece. And as you go up this like mountainous like series of deadly switchback roads, in Greece, the sense of like vertigo you start to get as you realize like, oh, in the last 5 minutes, I've ascended like 1,500 feet in the air. And now the edge of the road is facing a sheer cliff that will dump me like down back where I started into fiery wreck. So I better not like do that. And by the way, even the co-driver will sort of allude to this where you'll get like, okay, it's a left 3, narrows into a right 4, definitely don't cut. And what that means is definitely don't cut the corner. But you don't know why until you round the corner. You realize if you cut that, you'll tip the car down the hill and you'll lose it. So like there's places where you can sort of play fast and loose with that. And there's places where it'll just end your run. But yeah, just the sense of like, oh, this is really dangerous. This is really fast. I'm at the very limit of control here, but also it's unpredictable, or at least less predictable than like a Forza or circuit-based game. And it looks and feels really good. And so like I'm a little bummed that like, oh, well now I would be kind of sold on WRC 11 if it were coming out, but no, it's going to go back to Codemasters. Hopefully they do something cool with it. But in the meantime, this thing feels great. Like I am kind of a convert to the series that I've been happily ignoring for years. And now I'm like, well, you just feel like nothing else that I've played in ages. And so we'll see how long this lasts, but there's just enough weird goofiness to it, wedded to a really like good feeling driving model and like a really nice approach to the way the environment looks and the way it's sort of like the ways in which it's convincing. I'm like kind of all in on this at the moment. Again, we'll see how long it lasts, but it's
also we'll see whether or not that carries over to whatever Codemasters does with it, right? Like
people like the dirt rally games. People have said that like they've done a good job with that stuff. They've acquired a lot of good development talent in recent years. But yeah, I think the thing that worries me is that overall, I would say Codemasters sometimes has a bent toward the generic is the way I would put it, where I don't know. It's again, it's a hard thing. It's a hard thing to to quantify, but a lot of the games they make seem to land in a place where like the handling models are all like sort of convincing, but also kind of feel samey, and kind of smooth off the rough edges of like what they're simulating. And this feels like, yep, those edges are pretty rough, but in a way that's like really exciting.
He's a rally guy now.
I might be a rally guy now. I don't know. I saw some people saw some people talking about like, rally's really good now. People don't realize like how good rally is. And I'm like, I don't realize how good rally is. Maybe it is really good right now. Which is tough because, IndyCar is really good right now. World endurance might be really good right now. So there's a whole lot of stuff that could be really good right now. Maybe this is my year of motorsports. Who can say?
This year, unlike other years, is Rob's year of motorsports.
Everyone has their New Year's resolutions. Rob's got his. Time to get into rally sports. It's Rob's two things he needs to do in 2022 is like, gotta sleep better, gotta get into rally sports. How can I do these two things at the same time?
Oh no, dude! When do
that was my question. Is rally sports like soccer, where you're gonna be up at 3 a.m. watching?
Is it all European?
Yeah.
So this is the thing. I don't know how you watch rally. Like,
no.
it's not like a race. It's not like there's a lot to watch. I don't even know why. I don't fully understand why people go and watch rally. Like, I know that people do it, and it's often like blood curdling because you'll see people standing like inches from this road with no like safety rails at all. And cars just go blasting past them at like 80, 90 miles an hour. And you're like, that seems weird. But also like, that's what you see. You're in a forested road. You have no line of sight. A car comes whipping past you and then it's gone. And you're like, yep, that was what I'm going to see of that person's run. So I don't fully get it. I know when I've seen rally racing in the past, like there's a lot of, they basically set up static camera positions along the route. There are good in-car cams capturing the event. But like, I'm not sure like people really watch, like sit there and like watch run after run playing out. I'm not sure. It might be one of the sports that you follow more than you like watch live.
Oh man. Well, great. Well, you've just kicked off maybe 3 emails for people to correct you on. I don't want to watch rally. I had to disappear briefly earlier in this podcast when you were pivoting over to, I think, Lake, because already day one of my child being at school got an email that was a child has tested positive under the teacher in your class. Fortunately, my daughter is in kindergarten, in which you're only there for 2 hours, and it's an AM and a PM class. Us not being contacted means we are not. I'm pretty sure it means it was in the PM class, but I had to like race upstairs to my wife and be like, did you get a phone call? Is our daughter just like stranded in a nurse's office until one of us comes and gets her? But yeah, so this is my fear. But off to the races. Day one. Just like Neo out here dodging bullets that I can't see. It's a shitty Neo. Like, I'm dodging the bullets, but I don't know how. I'm not learning lessons about why. And I don't feel like I'm becoming more powerful. I just know that I'm dodging them.
I'm just not going out.
Yeah.
But this thing, I'm on easy mode, right? I work from home. I don't have a kid.
Yep.
Like I would, it's really a shame. Like my view in this situation is it's a bit like, your kid, in Crimson Tide where they're like in danger of losing the ship unless they close that compartment and just like seal it. But like, we still got men down there. It's like, but if we don't seal them down there, we're going to lose the ship. I'm afraid is
this my child? Am I supposed to lock the 5-year-old out of
It's
that?
unfortunate. It's unfortunate. But to save the vessel, hard decisions have to be made. Nobody made that child go to school except the state, of course. But they knew the risk when they signed up.
I guess
being born.
she could just stay at the school, I guess. Hey, I'll pick you up in, the isolation period is down to 5 days, right? 5 days at the school. Have fun. They got cots, right?
God.
Yeah, I could not handle it because I'd just be mad. I'd be so mad that it's like, here I am, got everything buttoned down, got my N95s, like limiting my exposure to everything else. And then it's like, and then this child goes out in the world to be exposed to all the things our society is fucked up.
Yeah. Her school has done an exceptional job. Like I couldn't be happier with how the school has handled their various challenges over the time that we've been engaged with it. She's only kindergarten, so it's only her first 6 months with that. But like you can do all of the things that you think should be doing, and then shit's still gonna happen. You can't control all the parents and the kids. Like there's no vaccine requirement for the kids to come back to school. So it's like our kids got it, and that's the most I can do. She wears the mask and forgets she has the mask on, but everything we know about Omicron is that like it doesn't really care about the cloth masks anymore, and so
they're basically transparent to it.
Yes, so. Well, I'll let you know. Tune in on Thursday or Friday, I guess. By the end of the week, we'll see where I'm at.
Well, before your COVID gets too bad, hopefully we can make some real progress on Dark Pictures.
House of Ashes.
House of Ashes.
Wife guy needs to find out.
I feel like we're about to
his relationship.
We're about to accidentally swap out Patrick for swapping in Natalie.
Oh, that's Well, it's good luck to us all. Don't mock anyone that's got it, because I think you're just attracting it in your direction. It's
Yep.
That's how I feel. That's my reaction to the news.
That's how I feel about House of Ashes. Admittedly, I've only played it for like 30 seconds.
Yeah.
Because Cado was like, how many characters can I play? And assigned me the Invisible Man, effectively. No, I'm sure my guy will become a bigger part as soon as he stops accidentally strangling teammates.
Accidentally? You click that button.
It's happy. It's just like, just doing some painting. Happy accidents.
Yeah. Well, that's a wrap on today's episode of Waypoint Radio. If you want more from Waypoint, you can follow us on Twitter at Waypoint, on Facebook and YouTube, Waypoint Vice. You can follow me at Rob Zachney. Patrick, where can people find you?
At Patrick Klepek.
Cado.
At _Cado_appears.
This week, we're going to be recording on The Matrix Resurrection. So if you have questions, feel free to send those in. We might answer some of them. Track record isn't great. I will concede that. Our track record of putting those questions to work is not amazing. We read them.
We have a lot
and
to
a lot
say
of times
about the
realize
Matrix.
that really, we should have just gotten better questions.
Okay.
Because
all right.
Wow.
if we weren't reading the questions and realizing that we answered all of them throughout our conversation that was too long, then we would have things to say about these questions. But as it happens, it's all mooted by the time we read it. So is the problem us that we ignore the questions, or is the problem the questions themselves?
You can subscribe to Waypoint Plus at waypointplus.com.
Not only do you get access to our premium feed, but you're also helping support Waypoint, and especially Waypoint streams such as that House of Ashes stream. So check that out. That once again, that is waypointplus.com. And one thing we learned over the break is them folks love sales, but the sales are over. You missed them. If you didn't sign up.
Wow.
Jesus, Rob, just like come listen to this podcast where we'll talk about a Sunday night football game for a huge chunk of time, and then also tell you have shitty Matrix questions, but also sign up and you missed the sale. Just
I'm sure there'll be a sale again.
There will be more sales eventually.
It'll be. Yeah,
Time
we had a
continues
conversation. We
onward.
had a conversation this week about when that would be, but some other things need to line up first.
Might be a while though. So next time you see a sale, you get on that. You get on that. Don't play around being like, I'm sure there'll be a sale soon. No. Sales are special. if they're just happening all the time, but they're not special anymore. Like dessert, really. The little treats.
We appreciate you all for supporting us. Thank you. Whether
Yeah.
you use
Yeah,
the sale
Rob,
or not.
We are a group. Rob, we are not a monolith.
Yeah,
Rob does
Rob
not speak
does
for all
not
of us.
speak for us.
Our theme music is by Bowen. The track is Miss You off the EP Pale Machine. Learn more at waypoint.zone/BOEN. That's us calling time on this Tuesday's podcast. We will talk to you again on Friday. And again, we will be streaming House of Ashes, hopefully, with Patrick or with Natalie filling in for Patrick. We will see how things go from here. Until then, fuck capitalism, go home, stay home if you can.